I never meant for this to happen. But the truth is, it didn't feel like a betrayal until the silence after. That kind of silence, the one that creeps in after something irreversible, feels different. It doesn't scream. It just lingers, like fog that never fully lifts. I was sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, staring out the window as the snow blurred the city lights. One strap of my dress had slipped down my shoulder, but I didn't bother to fix it. My hands were still, resting in my lap. The room was warm, but I felt cold under my skin. For a long time, I thought the emptiness in my marriage was normal. Something that just happened after enough years together. You get used to the quiet. The missed connections. The way someone can be sitting right next to you and still feel 100 miles away. Grady hadn't touched me in months. I used to count the days. I kept hoping he'd reach for me at night, maybe even just hold my hand under the covers like he used to. But eventually, I stopped waiting. Stopped hoping. Now, I just count the moments I miss being wanted. He still lives with me. Technically. He walks through the same doors, eats the food I make, uses the towels I fold. But he doesn't see me anymore. Conversations in the kitchen are short and clipped. I eat dinner alone even when he's home. I ask him how work was, and he says, fine, without looking up from his phone. I laugh at things and catch myself looking at him, hoping for a shared smile. But there's nothing. Just him scrolling, answering emails, nodding at the right times without ever really listening. It hurts in a quiet way. Not like a stab. More like slow erosion, like being worn down grain by grain until you forget what you were before. I didn't expect to feel anything that weekend. I was too tired. Too used to disappearing in my own home. But then Zayden showed up. He hadn't been home in over a year. Off at college, chasing his future, becoming someone. I'd only heard scraps about his life, second-hand updates from Grady, half listened to over breakfast. I barely remembered the last time we really talked. But when I opened the front door that afternoon and saw him standing there, I froze. Zayden wasn't a kid anymore. He stood taller. His face was sharper, more defined. He didn't just smile, he looked. His eyes met mine and didn't immediately move away. And for a second, just 1 second, I felt seen. He had come back for Grady's birthday weekend. I'd cleaned the house, baked the cake, made the dinner reservations, did everything I thought might pull Grady out of his usual fog. But of course, Grady was already distracted. Talking about some client crisis, a new deal. Barely said 2 words to his son. Barely noticed the effort I'd poured into making that weekend feel like something. Zayden noticed, though. He walked in and told me the house smelled like cinnamon. He asked if I was tired. He helped me carry groceries inside without being asked. He washed dishes while I dried them. It wasn't anything grand. It wasn't flirtation. But it was kindness. Awareness. And God, how long had it been since anyone just noticed me? Later that night, the snow started. Heavy. Relentless. We turned on the Weather Channel and found out most of the highways were already shutting down. We had planned to drive into the city the next morning, just me and Zayden, to pick up Grady's birthday gift from a boutique that wouldn't ship. Grady was flying out early for another business trip, so it was supposed to be a quick errand, just in and out. But the storm changed everything. We had to leave early. Risk getting stuck. Zayden offered to ride with me so I wouldn't go alone. Said he didn't like the idea of me driving in that kind of weather. I told him I'd be fine, but he insisted. So we packed an overnight bag. Just in case. Just one night. One hotel. No big deal. I didn't feel nervous at the time. Not really. But looking back, maybe something deep inside me already knew. Sometimes, it's not the big decisions that shift your life. It's the small ones, the ones that don't feel like turning points until you're already past them. I didn't know it yet. But something was coming. Something I couldn't undo. It was supposed to be a quick trip. We'd barely made it out of town before the storm swallowed the road behind us. Thick sheets of snow fell so hard it blurred the headlights, turning everything outside into a wall of white. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with every mile, and even though Zayden kept glancing over and offering to take over, I told him I was fine. He didn't argue. Just leaned back, one hand resting loosely on his leg, his breath fogging the passenger window. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it wasn't just filler. He asked if I was warm enough. He offered to pull up directions when my GPS froze. At one point, when the tires skidded slightly at a turn, he reached out instinctively, not grabbing me, but steadying the dashboard in that protective way, like his body reacted before his mind could. We didn't plan to stop, but once the highway sign started flashing with warnings, road closed ahead due to weather conditions, we had no choice. The only hotel around was a dated little place tucked between a diner and a gas station. The kind of spot with buzzing neon lights and a lobby that smelled faintly like lemon-scented cleaner and old carpet. The front desk clerk barely looked up. Just slid a key across the counter and said, "Last one." One room. One bed. My stomach flipped, but I nodded like it didn't matter. Zayden took the key and thanked the guy, then looked at me. "I'll take the floor," he said, already walking toward the elevator. I wanted to tell him it wasn't necessary, that we were both adults, and that it was just one night. But my throat felt tight, so I followed him in silence. The room was simple. Beige walls, a small table, one armchair, one large bed. There was a heater beneath the window, humming inconsistently. A little too warm, then not enough. Zayden tossed his duffel to the corner, pulled out a sweatshirt, and started arranging some extra blankets and a spare pillow onto the floor near the wall. "You're not sleeping on the floor," I said, finally finding my voice. He turned to me. "It's fine, really. You'll be more comfortable." I shook my head. "We'll both be uncomfortable. Just take the bed. I'll sleep on top of the covers, you take the sheets. We'll face opposite directions. It's just one night." He hesitated, but nodded. For a moment, we stood there in the quiet, both of us unsure where to look. I turned toward the window, pretending to be interested in the snow piling up outside. He walked over to the small hotel coffee pot, fiddling with the paper cups and sugar packets. "You want tea?" he asked. "They've got chamomile, and whatever this is," he added, holding up a pouch labeled cinnamon spice, with a raised brow. I smiled, just a little. "Chamomile's fine." He brought it over to me a few minutes later. As he handed me the cup, our fingers brushed. Just for a second. But something in my chest stuttered, like a skipped heartbeat. He didn't flinch. Didn't pull away quickly. Just looked at me with that same open stillness he always had. I stepped back, lifting the tea to my lips to give myself something to do. It was too hot, and it burned a little. But I didn't say anything. We sat on the bed, on opposite ends. I kept my knees pulled up, one hand wrapped around the warm cup, the other resting on my thigh. He leaned back against the headboard, legs stretched out, eyes fixed on the muted television across the room playing a movie neither of us were watching. The silence stretched, but it wasn't the uncomfortable kind. It was full of something I couldn't name. Something that made my skin feel tight, my breath a little more shallow. Out of nowhere, he laughed, soft, almost to himself. I turned to look at him. "What?" I asked. He glanced over at me, his smile lopsided. "Just remembered that time you tried to make that birthday cake for Dad and it collapsed in the oven. You were so mad at the frosting." I blinked. Then I laughed. Really laughed. It caught me off guard, the sound of it, sharp, full, real. It was the first time in months I heard my own laugh. And it startled me. He laughed, too. We just sat there, the bed between us, and let the sound fill the room for a minute. Eventually, the laughter faded. I turned back toward the window, watching the snow pile higher against the street lamp outside. He got up and adjusted the heater when it started rattling again, tapping it gently until it settled. I watched him while he worked, quietly capable, patient. There was a calm to him I hadn't noticed before. Or maybe I had, but just never let myself see it. When he sat back down, he looked over at me. His expression was soft. Curious. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Just tired." He nodded back. "Yeah. Me too." We turned off the lights after that. Laid down with a foot or two of space between us, our backs facing away. But sleep didn't come easily. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my eyes tracing the faint lines in the plaster. I could hear him breathing. Steady. Close. The kind of sound that shouldn't have meant anything, but somehow, did. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me when I laughed. Like it mattered. Like I mattered. It shouldn't have stirred anything in me. But it did. And somewhere between the ticking heater, the snow tapping against the window, and the sound of him shifting under the blanket beside me, I found myself asking something I didn't want to admit out loud. When was the last time someone really looked at me like that? The room was quiet in that way only late-night hotel rooms can be, dim, still, filled with the distant hum of something mechanical behind the walls. The storm outside had slowed, but the windows still moaned under the wind, and somewhere below, a plow scraped across the parking lot like a warning I didn't yet understand. Zayden and I lay on opposite sides of the bed, facing away from each other. A couple of feet of space between us, but it felt like a thread stretched tight. I kept thinking if I moved even an inch, the thread would snap. Or worse, it wouldn't. I could feel his presence. Not just his body heats through the mattress, but the weight of him in the room. The subtle rustle when he shifted. The way he cleared his throat softly, as if thinking about saying something but letting it die before it reached his mouth. My thoughts were loud, though. Deafening. I tried to focus on the ceiling, counting the tiny shadows cast by the dim hallway light sneaking in through the crack beneath the door. But I couldn't ignore the way my heart had picked up when he'd said my name earlier, just after we laughed. It had been a simple thing. Barely anything. Just Mallory. But there was something in the way he said it. Not casual. Not flippant. Gentle. Like it meant something. He spoke again, his voice low in the dark. "Did you ever think he'd change?" I didn't answer right away. I knew what he meant. There was no need to name Grady. We both understood the question hung in the space like steam, thick, warm, impossible to ignore. "I used to," I whispered. "When we first got married, I thought it was just stress. Work stuff. Then I thought it was just a phase. Then I stopped thinking about it at all." A pause. Then, softer, "I think I just forgot what it's like to feel wanted." Zayden was quiet for a moment. Then he shifted slightly, and I felt the mattress dip. My mom used to say Dad only knew how to love people when they weren't in the room, he murmured. I used to think she was bitter. But maybe she was just tired. There it was again, his voice. Honest. Unpolished. It didn't try to fix anything. It just was. And somehow that felt like a kind of balm I hadn't known I needed. I turned slowly, just enough to glance at him. He was lying on his back now, one arm tucked under his head, staring at the ceiling like I had been. The room wasn't cold, but I pulled the blanket tighter around me anyway. I didn't know what I was shielding myself from, him or myself. I wanted to say something. Something honest. Something brave. But all that came out was a whisper I wasn't sure I wanted him to hear. This isn't right. I thought he hadn't heard me. Then, barely audible, maybe nothing's been right in a long time. We didn't say anything after that. The silence settled again, heavier now, denser. It filled the corners, wrapped around my spine. He got up not long after, and said he was going to take a shower. I nodded but didn't move. I listened to the soft click of the bathroom door, the water starting a few seconds later. The sound was distant, muffled by cheap hotel walls, but I heard every drop like it was echoing in my chest. I stared at the bathroom door and hated how aware I was of his body. The silhouette behind the glass. The thought that just a few feet away, he was pulling a shirt over his head, stepping into warm water. I hated myself for noticing. For wondering how long he'd been this, grown. For remembering the curve of his jaw, the way his voice dipped when he spoke quietly. I closed my eyes. Tight. Stop. But when he stepped out, hair damp, t-shirt clinging to his collarbone, the steam trailing behind him, I felt my breath catch. He looked different. Not inappropriate. Not flirtatious. Just, at ease. Comfortable. Like he belonged in the room, like this wasn't something strange or dangerous. I turned away quickly, pretending to check my phone even though I knew there were no new messages. Grady hadn't texted. I wasn't surprised. Zayden walked to the table, poured water into one of the glasses the hotel had wrapped in plastic. He took a sip, then looked at me. You want one? I nodded. He brought it over. This time when our fingers touched, neither of us moved away. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. He stepped back. Sat on the edge of the bed. We stayed like that for a long time. Neither lying down. Neither moving forward. The air felt thin. I could feel my heartbeat in places I didn't even know had pulses. Eventually, we lay down again, him on his side, me on mine, still facing away. I didn't sleep. At some point in the night, I must have drifted, because when I opened my eyes just after dawn, something had changed. I was covered. A hoodie, his, was draped over my shoulders. The kind of gesture that didn't ask for anything. That just, gave. I looked over. He was still sleeping. Calm. Quiet. One hand tucked under his chin, his breath steady. I watched him for a moment and something inside me cracked, not in a painful way, but in a way that felt like warmth rushing back into numb fingers. His kindness didn't feel dangerous. It felt like being remembered. I pulled the hoodie a little tighter around me and looked out the window. The snow had stopped. The world outside was frozen and bright. And all I could think was, what happens now, if I can't forget how this feels? We never left the hotel. The storm didn't ease up the next day like the forecast promised. Instead, it deepened, turning roads to glass, the air to ice, and plans to nothing but wishful thinking. The hotel lobby was full of frustrated travelers and flickering updates on a mounted TV. But none of that mattered once we found out power had gone out on our floor. A wind-blown transformer, the front desk clerk said, was already overwhelmed. They handed us a small bundle, extra blankets, a few emergency candles, a matchbook printed with a smiley face and the words, "Stay cozy." I took the candles upstairs like I was carrying something sacred. The room felt different that second night. Not just because of the storm, or the lack of power, or the way the shadows stretched across the ceiling, but because of the quiet that settled between us. It wasn't the first night kind of quiet, unsure and stiff. This was something else. Like both of us knew we'd crossed some kind of invisible line but didn't have the language yet to say so. We lit one of the candles, setting it on the small table between the bed and the armchair. Its glow was soft, golden, a flickering pool of warmth in the cold blue dark. It carved out a little island where the two of us sat, Zayden on the bed, me on the edge of the chair, our knees just a breath apart. I watched the flame for a while. It danced, calm but restless. My fingers played with the sleeve of the hoodie he'd left on me the night before. I hadn't taken it off. "I thought you'd be gone by now," I said softly, more to the candle than to him. He didn't answer right away. Then, his voice low and steady, "I wanted to be. I told myself I should be. But..." I looked up. He was already watching me. His eyes didn't flinch. Didn't dart away. Just held mine, quiet, unwavering. There was no hunger in them. No calculation. Just something deeper. Like he was trying to memorize me. "I know this isn't right," he said. "And I've been telling myself to forget it. To stop whatever it is I've been feeling." He paused. Swallowed. "But I can't. I've felt this for a while now." I didn't move. Couldn't. The room didn't seem to move either. Just the candle, flickering between us. He went on. "You make me feel seen. Like I'm not just a name in someone else's story. When you talk to me, it feels like I matter." His words settled into my skin like warmth after cold. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the ache in my throat made it hard. So I said the only truth I had left in me. "I haven't felt seen in years." My voice cracked. I hated that it cracked. I hated that it made me feel exposed, but also grateful, because it was real. And I was so tired of pretending. Zayden shifted. Not toward me, not away. Just shifted. His hand moved across the blanket, slowly, until it rested near mine. Not touching. Just close enough that I could feel the heat of him. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt fragile. Like if one of us spoke too loudly, it would shatter. Then, gently, he reached up. His hand came close to my face, hesitated, and then brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm. Careful. Like he didn't want to startle me. Like he'd been thinking about that one simple gesture for longer than he'd admit. I closed my eyes. And I didn't pull away. When I opened them again, he was still watching me. So I did the only thing that felt honest. I turned my hand over, just slightly, until the back of his fingers grazed my palm. He let out the softest breath, barely a sound, and then slowly, deliberately, let his fingers curl into mine. We sat like that. Not speaking. Not moving. Our hands joined in the soft, flickering glow of the candle. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. His thumb brushed over mine in a slow, quiet rhythm that made me want to cry for reasons I didn't yet understand. There was no kiss. No embrace. Just closeness. Breath mingling in the space between us. Something deep and wordless blooming in the silence. It wasn't the kind of moment you write down. It was the kind that lives in you. That night, nothing happened. And everything happened. The second night settled on us like a blanket we didn't ask for. The snow hadn't stopped. If anything, it had deepened, heavier, more insistent. As if the storm itself was conspiring to hold us in place. By late afternoon, the lights flickered once, then again, and then stayed off. The heater sighed into silence. The TV screen went black. And the hum of everything modern and safe disappeared, leaving us in a strange stillness, cut off from the world. The hotel handed out candles and emergency blankets like it was all perfectly routine. Zayden lit one and set it on the table between the bed and the chair. The flame was small, golden, almost shy, but it filled the room with a kind of glow that felt softer than the overhead lights ever could. He sat on the edge of the bed. I sat beside him, not too close, not too far. Just close enough that I could feel the outline of his presence. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, neither of us moved. I don't know how long we sat there like that. Time lost its shape. The storm, the cold, the flickering candle, it all became background to the weight of what hadn't been said. Then, Zayden shifted slightly. Turned toward me, elbows on his knees, head dipped. I felt the air change. He didn't look at me when he spoke. I know this isn't easy to say. Or to hear, he began, voice barely above a whisper. And I've tried to shut it down in my head 100 times. But it keeps coming back. I didn't breathe. He looked up. Met my eyes. I know it's not right. But I've felt this for a while now, he said, slowly. You make me feel seen. Not in some over-the-top, movie kind of way. Just, like I matter. Like I'm not invisible. Something inside me stirred. A fragile, aching thing I thought I'd buried years ago. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came. So I nodded instead. Once. Twice. Then I found my voice. I haven't felt seen in years, I said, and it came out so quietly it surprised me. I didn't even realize how much I missed it. Being noticed. Being important to someone. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was full. Alive. I looked at him then, not like a stepson, not like the awkward teenager I'd once known. But like someone who had quietly grown into a man without asking for permission. Someone who saw me in a way even my own husband hadn't in a very long time. He reached out slowly. His hand came toward my face, stopping just inches from my cheek. I didn't move. Then he brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were careful, almost reverent, as if he didn't want to startle me. I closed my eyes. Let it happen. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel foolish for needing something. When I opened my eyes again, he was still there, watching me like I was something worth remembering. Neither of us spoke. There wasn't anything left to say. His hand moved down, gently grazing mine. We didn't grab or cling. Just let our fingers slowly find each other, palm to palm, warm and trembling. The candle between us flickered. Shadows danced on the walls. I could feel his breath, close. Soft. The kind of closeness that could unravel something if we let it. And still, we didn't move. We just sat there. hands intertwined. A few inches and 1,000 unspoken things between us. We didn't kiss. We didn't cross the line in the way people think lines get crossed. But something shifted. Quietly. Irrevocably. That night, nothing happened. And everything happened. The morning light didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like exposure. Thin and cold, it slipped through the hotel curtains and stretched across the room like it was searching for something. I blinked against it, wrapped tighter in the blanket even though I wasn't cold. Zayden was already up. I heard him moving near the sink, rinsing out the glasses from the night before. No words. Just the quiet sounds of water, glass, the soft rustle of fabric as he pulled on his coat. We didn't say much as we packed up. Just small things. Do you want the charger? Is that your scarf? Little lifeboats of language in a sea of everything left unspoken. The drive home was silent. Not strained, just still. Like we both knew whatever that night had been, it didn't belong outside the walls of that room. It had lived in the glow of a candle, in a whisper of warmth, in hands that held without asking for anything. And now, in daylight, it could only echo. He stared out the window most of the way. I watched the road, the snow now melting in patches along the shoulder. It looked softer. Less threatening. But I didn't feel safe. When we pulled into the driveway, Grady's car was already there. Of course it was. Zayden reached for the door handle but paused. "I'll grab my things later," he said, his voice quiet. "I think I need to figure some stuff out." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't ask where he was going. I just nodded. My hand tightened around the steering wheel even though the engine was off. He got out and didn't look back. Inside, Grady was standing by the kitchen counter, typing something into his phone with one hand and stirring his coffee with the other. He looked up when I walked in, gave me a half smile. "You get it?" he asked. I nodded again. Set the bag down. He didn't ask how the drive was. Didn't ask if the roads were bad, or if I was okay. He just went back to his screen. And I, like I always had, made coffee. I moved through the kitchen like muscle memory. Measuring the grounds, filling the carafe, pressing buttons. Everything is familiar. Everything is empty. I stood there as the coffee began to brew, the soft drip and hiss filling the silence. And I realized I didn't feel like myself anymore. Not the version of me I had been. Not the version I thought I was becoming. Just someone in between. Like I'd stepped out of my skin and didn't know how to get back in. That night I hadn't rewritten everything. But it had left a mark. And now, I carried it. Later, after Grady left for work, I was gathering laundry when I found it, Zayden's hoodie. Tucked into the bottom of the basket, still faintly carrying the scent of hotel soap and something warmer. I froze when I saw it. Just stood there, holding it in both hands like it might vanish if I blinked. I pressed it to my chest. Closed my eyes. And I let myself feel it. All of it. The ache. The closeness. The guilt. The tenderness. The quiet beauty of being seen, and the unbearable weight of knowing it couldn't last. My phone buzzed on the counter. I opened my eyes, loosened my grip on the hoodie. A text from Grady. "Dinner tonight?" I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen. The question hung there, bright and clean and detached from everything I'd become in the past 48 hours. I set the phone down. The room was silent. Some betrayals don't come with fireworks. Just silence. A silence so full of feeling, it breaks you. If this story made you feel something, tell me in the comments. What would you have done? Have you ever been in a moment that blurred the lines between wrong and real? If these stories speak to you, subscribe and turn on the bell. We have more to tell. More hearts to open. And more silences that need to be heard. Thank you for listening.